honored to have K. Michael Williams, known to me as Kid. And he's a longtime member of the Recreation Collective, and in fact was in the first workshop I ever facilitated at Rikers Island, and he now is the editor of our little literary mag. So we're proud. And I'll let Kid take it from here.
Hello.
Nope.
Hello. Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming. First of all, I want to apologize to John and my colleagues and all of you for being late. I had to go to the bathroom. And we were here last night, me and Kadira, and she will tell you those stairs terrified me. And as you can see, I had to be very careful. So I'm not as mobile as I'd like to be anymore. And I appreciate your patience. Okay, what I'm about to read is called Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover. Caught in the middle, you enter a courtroom hoping for fairness. The defense team will use its history and experience to present you in a light that indicates innocence or at least deserving mercy. On the other side of the table, prosecutors use the law to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the charges presented before the court. And while the presumption of innocence is more than a moral statute, than a constitutional guarantee, the concept is a basic requirement of the promised fair trial. Of course, despite the system's so-called best intentions, the concept of fairness can be seen as pure promotion. Case in point, the People versus Leron Liggins. 1. The People versus Leron Liggins. Leron Liggins found himself in handcuffs in 2018, charged with heroin possession and the intent to distribute. Liggins' trial was set for June of the following year. According to court records, Liggins got the date changed 5 times. Among other reasons, the delays were the result of the defendant's discontent with his representation. The 25-year-old had his lawyer replaced 3 times. He also insisted he couldn't decide whether to take the prosecutor's offer. The trial date was finally rescheduled for October 2021. At some point, the judge monitoring the case, Michigan's Eastern District Judge Stephen Murphy III, found his patience strained. During the 2020 hearing, the judge declared Liggins was playing games. And Murphy didn't stop there. In open court, he declared, "I'm tired of this case. I'm tired of this defendant. I'm tired of getting the runaround. This guy looks like a criminal to me. This is what criminals do." In 2021, a jury convicted Liggins. Judge Murphy sentenced the defendant to more than 10 years in prison. Liggins and his legal team filed an appeal and won. This guy looks like a criminal to me. How the judge's words were perceived. A Michigan federal appeals court overturned the sentence in August 2023. The justices agreed the judge's statements, which included "looks like a criminal to me," were far too damaging. That and other unacceptable remarks hindered the defendant's right to due process. The appeals court also factored in that in 2021, before the trial, a lawyer for Liggins asked the judge to recuse himself based on those remarks. Murphy denied the motion, and he made no public statement about the matter throughout the trial. Not that it shouldn't surprise anyone, but once the sentence got overturned and the judge's remarks became public, he decided it was time to humble himself. Judge Murphy boldly argued his demeanor had nothing to do with any inability to remain impartial. Just because I got mad doesn't mean I'm biased. Prosecutors, looking to safeguard the conviction, took allegiance with the judge. They claimed Murphy's frustration was understandable. Contesting the defendant's apparent and deliberate manipulation of the system to prolong the process was the reason. The appeals court disagreed. The defendant's conduct didn't need to be understandable. Liggins' success in prolonging the proceedings was in the purview of fair practice, and no officer of the court had the right to prejudge guilt based on said behavior. Liggins, the first defense attorney at trial, Wade Fink, admitted there was certainly the idea of gamesmanship on both sides of the legal table. Of course there is, but does that mean a judge is entitled to lose his cool in the way it happened here? No. It is very important that community observers of the criminal justice system, especially in a majority black city like Detroit, can see that the folks in court are being given a fair shake. Not that it should surprise anyone, but once the sentence got overturned and the judge's remarks became public, he decided it was time to humble himself again. The alleged truth. Believe it or don't, recent studies imply that there is no justice system bias when it comes to arresting and sentencing black people. This despite the astonishing disparity in color within the prison population. Are things as bad as they were 60 or 20 years ago? No. But I wouldn't jump up and down and applaud correctional progress. Current theories ignore the fact that a black individual is far more likely to see a conviction for a crime, whereas a white person charged with the same offense has a greater chance of either receiving a lesser sentence or no time at all. Statistics demonstrate whites and blacks are equally responsible for drug-related crimes, but 4 times the number of blacks go to prison for them. And we haven't even touched on the actions of the police. While in junior high, my son told me a story that still infuriates me over 20 years later. He and another black friend were on their way home from school. Walking in front of them was a small group of white kids, a group openly engaging in beer and pre-legalized weed. A patrol car deliberately drove past the group of law-breaking white kids and stopped the 2 black kids, questioning them more to annoy than anything. This was the day I learned my son never got from school to Subway or vice versa without being stopped by those who serve and protect. Nearly every day. On one occasion, he left school and 3 different patrols stopped him between the school and the train station. I called the local precinct and spoke to public affairs, but expected nothing and got just that. Earlier this year, my friend Sonny was arrested for a decades-old, not that Sonny. Earlier this year, my friend Sonny was arrested for a decades-old warrant. Instead of throwing out the decrepit matter, the court fined Sonny $500. I believe it would be difficult to convince anyone who's had contact with the Carceral Apparatus that a white person probably wouldn't have seen the same result. Sure, conditions affect how the system treats you. The courts of law enforcement look at a defendant's demeanor, history, and seriousness of the offense. But you'll never convince us that the legal system often doesn't see innocent black residents, but potential suspects. We are regularly targeted when we fail to signal or if we walk down the wrong street. My aforementioned son drove an old Infiniti for years. He says his current BMW gets him stopped more times in a year than in all the years he drove that dusty Infiniti. Idealists argue that our rights are secured by the very laws that persecute us. Those poor souls have been misled by that blindfolded woman holding the scale. I do try to remember the concept of equality is grounded in the foundation built into the Declaration of Independence, a document Abraham Lincoln called a rebuke and a stumbling block to tyranny and oppression. But let's face it, even in the 20th century, certain peoples still face an uphill battle for a cause. The DOO, the Department of Justice, claims we have a right to from the get. That's when I remember our forefathers drafted a document that allegedly protected all of us, certifying what America stands for. And afterwards, the founding fathers went home to their slaves, wives, and kids. Thank you. I'm sorry. Lucky you, there's more. The aftermath, I didn't see it. I hadn't scrolled up. It would take years. It would take 2 years for Judge Murphy to publicly admit to his insulting and disparaging remarks. I was mad, I was hostile, I was disapproving, and I regret it. But the judge insisted it had nothing to do with prejudice against Liggins. But just because I got mad doesn't mean I'm biased. I'm not. Trust me. Would it surprise you to hear that despite the harsh criticism of the judge's actions, there is no current agenda for any penalization regarding the conduct? Meanwhile, Liggins awaits a new trial. Now, thank you.